Hello, class. Today is January the 11th, and we are going to do midpoint and endpoint. Please take out your interactive notebooks, pause whenever you need to. We're going to label this page Q3, okay, because we ended quarter two notes, just the notes. The quarter's not over, but we ended the notes on Friday, okay, so you can have a chance to get your notebook together this week, okay? So this is going to be our page one. And the title of this page is going to be Midpoint and Endpoint. All right. So we're going to make this very, very simple because these are two very, very simple concepts. A line segment has two endpoints, okay? Is a part of a line, okay, comma, it has two endpoints. And this is what it looks like, okay? It has two endpoints. This is an endpoint, and this is an endpoint. The midpoint is the halfway mark of a line segment. It's the middle. Your midpoint is the halfway point of a line segment. The midpoint is the halfway point of a line segment. Okay. There is an actual formula for calculating the midpoint. So we got midpoint formula. Your formula for midpoint, we're going to use the letter M, capital M, to represent midpoint. So your formula for midpoint is equal to, the answer is always going to be an ordered pair. You're going to take your x's from your endpoints and add them together, divided by 2, and that's going to give you your x coordinate of your midpoint. Then you're going to take your y's of your endpoint, you're going to add those together, divide by 2, and that's going to give you the y coordinate of the endpoint. Okay, so keep this in mind. Your endpoints are ordered pairs, has an x, a y, x, y. Your first endpoint, we're going to say is x1, y1. The second endpoint, we're going to say x2, y2. Okay, you're going to use these values to figure out what the halfway point or the midpoint actually is. Okay, and again, your midpoint is going to be, it's going to have an x and a y coordinate. Okay, now we're going to do some examples. All right, let's suppose that they give you, number one, sorry, they give you, let me slide this down just a tad bit so you can see the bottom part of the page. Let's suppose that they give you two ordered pairs. These are two endpoints. Let's make one of them -3 and 2. And let's make the other one a +4 and a -5. 3. So we're asked, these are two endpoints. This is an endpoint and this is an endpoint. Okay. We're asked to find the midpoint. Which is the halfway mark of, let's slide this one, the halfway mark between these 2 points. That's the midpoint. So to find the midpoint, we use the midpoint formula. So we label, this is x1, this is y1, this is x2, this is y2. Okay? And to find the actual midpoint value, your x and your y value for your midpoint, we're going to use this formula. We're going to take our x's, add them together, and divide by 2. So we got our x's, that's -3, plus we have 4, and we're going to divide that by 2. That's going to give us our x coordinate. We'll take our y's, add those y's together, and divide by 2. That's going to give us our y coordinate. So these are our x's, and these are our y's, okay? So here, put x's here, y's here. So here, when we do this, we have a +1 divided by 2, which is 1/2, or 0.5. Here, we have -1/2, or -0.5. And this is the point that's halfway in the middle between these two ordered pairs. So that's how you find midpoint. Oh, I didn't know you couldn't see the bottom. I'm sorry, y'all. Okay. All right. Pause for the calls so you can copy. All right. So let's do some more examples. Let's do some more examples. I'm going to look at this sheet right here, and this is on the Canvas page. This is the midpoint sheet. I'm going to go back to taking more notes for endpoint, but let's look at this midpoint. Let's do a couple examples here. So we want to find the halfway point, which is going to be this point right here. We're going to find the halfway point. We're going to use the formula, but we know it's this point right here that's in the middle, okay? Because it's the same distance. It's the halfway mark. All right, so again, your midpoint formula is an ordered pair. You take the x's and add your x's together and divide by 2. That gives your x coordinate. You take the y's and add the y's together and divide by 2, and that gives you your y coordinate for your midpoint. All right, so let's do this. We got 2 ordered pairs, 2 endpoints. This first endpoint here is negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. This other endpoint is -1 and -1. Okay. So we're going to use the midpoint formula. This is x1, y1, x2, y2. First point, second point. Take the x's and add those together. That's -5 plus -1 and divide by 2. Okay? This is going to give me -6 on the top, 2 on the bottom. That gives me an x coordinate of -3. Okay? Here, for the y's, we're going to take the y's and add those together and divide by 2. That's -5 again, plus -1 again, and divide by 2. That's going to give you the same answer, the same thing, -6/2, and that gives us -3. So the midpoint is -3, -3. So that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 down. This is your midpoint. Okay? This is your answer here. Let's look at the second one, number 2. Please make sure you show your work, okay? Endpoint, endpoint. So we got 2 again. I'll do 2 endpoints again. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's -5. 1, 2, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Negative 5 and positive 5. And this point down here is positive 1, 2, and negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So positive 2 and negative 5. Excuse me, use the same formula. This is going to be x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, you're going to take the x's, add it together, and divide by 2. Okay, so that's negative 5 plus 2 divided by 2. Okay, so this is for your x coordinate. This would be a negative 3 over 2. Okay, and your y's. This is going to be 5 plus a negative 5. This is going to give over 2. This is going to give me 0. Okay, so this is going to be my midpoint. So I have, this is negative 1.5. Okay, same thing. So we go over, this is 1, a half is right in the middle, and 0 means you don't go up or down. This is my midpoint right there. Negative 1.5, comma 0. Okay, and you're going to do the same thing for these. You got your 2 endpoints. Do it again. This endpoint is negative 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 1, 2. Negative 4, positive 2. This endpoint is positive 2 and positive 2. Okay, so we're going to do it again. Label x1, y1, x2, y2. Add your x's together, negative 4 plus 2, and divide by 2. So this gives me on the top, negative 2 divided by 2. Okay, so this is equal to negative 1. All right. Then your y's, 2 plus 2 divided by 2. 2 plus 2 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. So your midpoint is going to be negative 1 and positive 2. So we go over, negative 1 and up 1, 2. This is your midpoint right here. See how that's halfway? Okay. Oops, sorry, y'all. So you can see. All right, slide over a little bit. Let's do this one. Endpoint. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 1. So that's negative 4 and negative 1. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, positive 5, 1, 2, 3, 5 and 3. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. So for midpoint again, you're going to add your x's together. Add your x's together. Okay. So this is negative 4 plus 5 and divide by 2. So this is going to give us 1 over 2. Okay. Y's, add those together. Negative 1 plus 3 divided by 2. This gives us 2 over 2. So 2 over 2 is 1. So this is 1/2, comma 1. So 1/2 is right here, and go up 1 is right here. This is your midpoint. Okay? See if you pause the video and see if you can do the rest of these here on your own, okay? Pause the video. Okay, so now let's talk about, we did midpoint. So now let's talk about how to find, the endpoint, okay? Slide this over just a little bit more. All right, so now you're going to find your endpoint. Finding the missing endpoint. Finding the missing endpoint is a little bit more work than finding the midpoint, okay? You're obviously, not obviously, but you're going to use the midpoint formula. So you don't have to know a different formula. I'm going to use the midpoint formula. Okay. You're going to substitute the information that you have and solve for the information that's missing. Substitute values given and solve for values missing. Okay. All right. Super important. All right. That's what you're going to do. Okay. So let's jump right into it. Let's suppose that we are given an endpoint. They tell you that one of the endpoints is 5 and let's go over 5 and 6. Okay. And they tell you that the midpoint, okay, they tell you that the midpoint is 0, comma, -1. Okay, that's the midpoint. So you have to figure out what the other end of that point is. Okay, this is what's missing. All right, that's missing. So I'm going to label. This is given x1, y1, and this is what's missing. The second endpoint is missing. Okay, and they give you the midpoint. So this is what you do. Pay attention. You're going to use the midpoint formula. Remember, this is where you add the x's together. Divide by 2. You add the y's together. And divide by 2. Okay? So you add, this is the midpoint formula. So you're going to substitute the information that you need to figure out what your y2 or your second endpoint is. Okay? So let's do this. This first one, take this. We're going to figure out what the x2 is first. So figure out what the x2 is first. You know that the answer to the midpoint x is 0. So put 0 in here. You know that your x1 is 5. So we're going to put 5 here. So now all we have to do is we have to solve for the x2. So I'm going to put a 1 under this, okay? And I'm going to cross multiply. So this gives me 5 plus that x is equal to 0. So now to get this by itself, because 2 times 0 is 0, okay? It's cross multiplication. So I'm going to subtract 5 on both sides. And if it hurts you to see x2, you can erase the 2 and solve for x. It doesn't matter. This is going to be 0 here, and you're left with the answer for x2 is -5. So far, you have -5 here, okay? Okay, so now let's do the y the same way. All right, we got y1 plus y2 divided by 2. We know that the answer to midpoint for y is -1. See how I just plugged that in? We know that y1, look, is 6. So now put a 1 under it and use cross multiplication. Okay. So this gives me 1 times this 6 plus, and this gives me 2 times -1, which is -2. So this is just 6 plus y, okay? And then this is going to be, I'm going to subtract 6 on both sides. And this is going to be here is equal to a -8. So the endpoint, the other endpoint that is missing is -5 and -8. Okay, so you can go back over it again and watch this part of the video again if you didn't get that. Okay, rewind and watch that again. And I'm going to go and do some more examples, okay? All right. Okay, on the second sheet, I want you to try, in this block right here, this is just finding the endpoint again. Finding the midpoint again, 9 through 20. Just do the evens. For practice. So in this section, just do the even, okay? And you might have to write this on a separate piece of paper because you might not have enough space. Some of you write kind of small and maybe you have space here. You can use this side here, okay? For endpoint, I'm going to have to use a separate piece of paper because I don't have enough space there. So I'm going to use a separate piece of paper to do this bottom part, okay? And for this section, I do want you to do 21 through 26 because you need more practice with endpoint than you do with midpoint, okay? All right, so let's try it. Let's do it. 21. I'm doing this one right here, okay? So you have your endpoint and you have your midpoint. So let's label. We have X1, Y1. So what's missing? The other endpoint is missing. X2, Y2 is missing. So we're going to use the midpoint formula where we add our x's together, divide by 2. Add our y's together, divide by 2. Okay? We're going to substitute the information that we have to find the information that's missing. The x2, y2 is missing. Okay? So let's find x first. So this is your answer. Your midpoint is your answer because we're using the midpoint formula. So we have, when you're doing x's first, see what I did? Do x first. Your x value is -9, so this is equal to -9. Okay, so we're going to use, we know what our x1 is -1. So we're going to put -1 in that place. And we're going to use cross multiplication, okay, to solve this. So put a 1 under it, cross multiply. 1 times this is just going to give you this. So you got -1, and you're solving for x2. 2 times -9 is -18. All right, so now to get x2 by itself, you add 1 to both sides. So you add 1 to both sides, this is gone, and you're left with the value for x2. which is going to be a negative 17. Okay? So far, this is negative 17. Okay? So now let's do y. Let's do y now. You add the y's together, divide by 2. Okay? So again, let's look at the information that's given. We know that the answer to the y value for midpoint is negative 10. They give you y1, the first endpoint, which is 9. So we're going to put 9 here. Do the same thing again. Put a 1 under it, cross multiply. Okay, 1 times this is just going to give me this. 9 plus y2 is equal to, and you cross multiply here, this gives you a negative 20. Okay, so now we get y2 by itself by subtracting 9 on both sides. So this is gone, and I'm left with the y2 is equal to a negative 29. So the other endpoint, the second endpoint is negative 17, comma, negative 29. Okay? So this is your answer. Negative 17, comma, negative 29. Please make sure that you show your work. Don't just put answers. Make sure you show your work. Okay? All right, let's do 22. All right, so we got our endpoint. It's given. This is x1, y1, and we're missing the second endpoint. We're missing x2, y2. Okay? So again, we're going to use the midpoint formula where you add the x's together and divide by 2 to get your x coordinate. You add the y's together to get your y coordinate from midpoint. But they give you midpoint. You're trying to find endpoint, not midpoint, but endpoint. So substitute the values in order to figure out what the x's are. So let's do x first. So use this here. x1. All right, so what's the answer to midpoint for x? It's 5. So make this equal to 5. Okay, did you hear what I said? The answer for midpoint for x is 5. So that's why I made this equal to 5, okay? Now substitute the information that you know. You know what the first x coordinate is for the endpoint. Endpoint number 1 is 2. So we're going to put 2 here. So this is 2. Okay. All right. We're going to do the same thing to figure out what the x value is for your endpoint, your second endpoint. Put a 1 under the 5 and cross multiply. Again, 1 times this is just going to be this. The 2 plus x2. Bring down your equal sign. Okay. 5 times 2 is 10. So to get this x by itself, you subtract 2 on both sides. So now this is gone, and your x2 is equal to 8. Okay. So this is 8. So now let's do y. Got y. 1 plus y2 divided by 2. The answer for midpoint for the y, I can look again, is 5. Oh, dang. I did it. No. No. I was like, what the world did I do? It's 1. Jesus. I was looking at this. I'm supposed to be looking at this. Midpoint is 1. Okay? So we're going to put 1 right here. I was like, Lord, I did it wrong. But I'm good. We're good. We're good. So put a 1 under it. Okay? Don't forget, substitute what you have. Your y1 is 5. So you're gonna put 5 here. Okay. Cross multiply. 1 times this is just gonna give me this. Bring down the equal. 2 times 1 is gonna give me 2. Now I'm going to get y by itself by subtracting 5 on both sides. When I do that, I'm just left with the y2, and y2 here is equal to negative 3. So my second endpoint is 8, comma, negative 3. This is my second endpoint. Okay. All right. Let's do number 23. Okay. So this is what's given, x1, y1. They give you the midpoint, but they don't give you the second endpoint, okay? The second endpoint is missing. That's x2, y2. That's missing, okay? So you use the midpoint formula, add the x's together, and divide by 2. That'll give you your x coordinate. Add the y's together, and divide by 2. That'll give you your y coordinate, okay? All right. So now we're going to find the missing x coordinate for the second endpoint. So use this part of the formula. When you use this part of the formula, the answer for midpoint is going to be negative 10. So you have to put negative 10 here. Okay. Now you're going to substitute the information that's given. Your x coordinate that's given is 5. So you're going to put 5 here. Okay. I'm going to just go ahead and put the 5 here. Okay. So now we're going to solve for x2. Cross multiply. When you cross multiply, 1 times this is just going to give you that. 5 plus x2. Bring down the equal. 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. Okay? To get x2 by itself, you're going to subtract 5 on both sides. And that gives you x2 is equal to a negative 25. Okay? So now we need to find y2 by using this part of the formula. Okay? Your y midpoint value is equal to a negative 2. So we're going to put negative 2 here. Okay? Now we know what y1 is. y1 is positive 2. So we're going to put positive 2 here. Just replace this with 2. I'm going to put a 1 under this and cross multiply. 1 times this is just going to give me that again. 2 plus y2 is equal to 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. So to get y by itself, you have to subtract 2 on both sides. This leaves me with the y2 now, and this gives me a negative 6. So my endpoint, my second endpoint is going to be negative 25, comma, negative 6. Okay? Oops, I'm sorry, y'all. Gee whiz. Okay? So that's how I did it. Again, let me describe it one more time because I think my picture got cut off. What I did was I took this right here, rewrote it as you saw that I did, because I think you saw that part, and substitute the information that's given. My x1 is 5, so that's where I got the 5 from. Cross multiply, just like I did in the previous examples. And that gives me this line right here when I cross multiply. 1 times this gives me this. 2 times negative 10 gives me negative 20. To get this by itself, it's a positive 5, so I subtract 5 on both sides. That leaves me with this, I have negative 20 minus 5, which is negative 25. Did the same thing over here. Okay. All right. I substitute 2. Where did I get the 2 from, Miss Reyes? Right here. You see it? My endpoint that's given is 2. So I put 2 right here. Cross multiply again. That's how I got this. Cross multiply here. That's how I got this. Subtract 2 on both sides. That gives me this. This is negative 6. So this is my answer for endpoint. Okay? All right. If you need to, go back and watch the video for how to do endpoint. Keep watching until you get it. There are other YouTube videos on how to do endpoint. And I'll be going over with this again with you tomorrow. Please make sure that you complete. In this section, I need you to complete 21, 22, 23. We did those. 24, 25, and 26. Okay? So in this document, you've already done these. You should have done these on your own. Okay? And then you do the even here. And then we did these 3 together, and you do these 3 on your own. Once you finish doing that, please make sure you submit this assignment. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.